Welcome to another episode of Ton's 2 Cents podcast. Today's episode is titled The SBA Small Business Scorecard, a Disservice to Small Business. We will explore this implication of great inflation on the SBA scorecard and its impact on small businesses. I'm your host, Todd Wilson, and with us today is Steve Koprince, a managing partner at Koprince McCall Potroff LLC, who will share his expert insights on this topic. Steve and I have known and worked with each other for decades. And so, Steve, I think our industry knows you quite well. But thank you for joining us here today. And for those who may not know you, can you please say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself to our listeners who we call intellectuals?
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here to talk about this topic that's near and dear to my heart about SBA's grading scheme for small business contracting. I do want just a minor correction. I am the former managing partner of Koprince McCall Potroff, former attorney, practicing attorney. In fact, my legal license is inactive now. But I am an attorney by trade. That's my background. Practiced law about 16 to 17 years, somewhere in there, almost exclusively for federal contractors. I've worked with over 1,000 contractors in my career. Most of them are small businesses, but some are mid-sized, some are multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies as well. So it spanned the whole gamut. At the end of 2021, I had the opportunity to pass my equity stake in the firm off to a couple wonderful former colleagues, dear friends, partners of mine, Shane McCall and Nicole Potroff, who continue to run that firm as a GovCon boutique, working with many contractors. I've moved into other things. I do some teaching with an entity called Gavology, which you may be familiar with. It does a lot of teaching for federal contractors. I'm on the board of directors for a tribally owned entity that owns several 8A and non-8A contracting companies. A former client of mine. It's a really wonderful organization. And I actually do a lot of volunteer work now. I'm on the board of directors and volunteer frequently for a local nonprofit agency here in my hometown of Lawrence, Kansas. It provides disadvantaged individuals and families with early childhood education opportunities, wraparound services to help the families get through tough times in their lives and things like that. So all those things are kind of taking up my time now, along with being a dad. But this is probably a good point to say that as I sit here with you here today, that I'm just here in my personal capacity. The views I'm about to give don't represent any of the entities that I'm currently or formerly were affiliated with, just my personal.
I know old habits die hard, right? When you associate someone with a certain organization, and definitely, Shane and I have been involved on a number of other collaborations, which is great. And I love following you on LinkedIn. And I know a lot of our followers here at this podcast are interested in a lot of our guests and things like that. So, you mentioned something that was kind of interesting because you did kind of come out of retirement a little bit, didn't you? It's like you retired, you came out of retirement, but you will forever be, associated with GovCon. So how are you liking, working from a remote location? Because I know you and I said, to heck with DC, to heck with the East Coast, and kind of, move out to the central part of the country here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, I am at this point retired from practicing law. I guess you never say never, but at this point, I don't have any plans to go back to that. I do get folks who reach out to me actually somewhat frequently asking, hey, am I still practicing? It's very flattering, but I refer them to Shane or Nicole or other folks that I know and trust in the field, which are many, because I'm just not doing that now. But yeah, I'm not somebody who's good at sitting around just watching TV, right? I'm never going to be that kind of retiree, whether it's at my current age or if I'm 85. I'm always going to want to have projects. And I love government contracting and being involved in the industry, even in a different way. So I've kind of gotten more active in that, posting a lot on LinkedIn. I've got a newsletter there you can follow on LinkedIn. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this is long before the COVID pandemic led to a lot of the uptick in working from home and all those sorts of things, and remote work is probably never going back to where it was before. But back in 2012, when I was living in DC, we made the call, my wife and I, to move to the Midwest, which is where I have my my family roots, and I took the leap of faith that that you could be a government contracts attorney not in DC, keeping in mind that government is nationwide, the contractors are nationwide, and that I didn't feel that it was necessary to have that physical presence all the time in DC, although I go back and forth for various things to be successful in that field. And that turned out to be correct, and now it doesn't sound so crazy, but back in 2012, it was definitely a pretty unique circumstance to have a GovCon attorney who was not DC located, just like I'm sure in your case, Tana, it was not the normal court. You probably got the same comments I did when you packed your bag.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're like, "What's in Texas?" It's like, well, there's a lot of things in Texas. There's a lot of
things going on there. A lot of things. So, and that's not to say I love DC. It's a great place, but this Midwest, it was the right place to raise our kids. It's working.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, let's just cut to the chase and jump right into our discussion here today, because I know that you blog a lot about this, and there's a lot of things in the news with the veteran-owned small business certification and the SBA and things like that. So I think this is such a very timely conversation that we're having. So to kick things off, like let's kind of get a straightforward overview about and understanding the small business, the SBA Small Business Scorecard. What is the SBA Small Business Scorecard, and what is it supposed to really achieve or inform us about?
Yeah, and so the SBA scorecard has its origins in congressional legislation. And so the SBA, of course, Small Business Administration, is the agency responsible for overseeing many things, but in our context of our conversation, for essentially overseeing the government's efforts to do business with small businesses, to get small businesses involved in federal contracting, to maximize contract opportunities, both at the prime contract and subcontract level for small businesses, and for various socioeconomic subcategories of small businesses, of which there are four-ish, depending on how you look at it, major socioeconomic subcategories that are tracked by the scorecard, which are your service disabled, veteran-owned small businesses, your small disadvantaged businesses, which include 8As, your hub zones, that's the historically underutilized small businesses, or folks from historically underutilized business zones, and your women-owned and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. And so the scorecard is really meant to be, it's like a report card, essentially. What Congress said is, look, SBA, we've established goals. We've established goals in legislation for awarding prime contract dollars to small businesses, and those four-ish, because there's subcategories like EDWSB for those subcategories. And we want you, SBA, to give us an overview of how the government is doing. And so the statute's been tweaked a bit over the years, but what the statute essentially says is, look, SBA, we want you to rate the agencies, to develop a scorecard. And as we get into it, and I'm going to give some constructive criticism of SBA scorecard, the SBA has structured this with very broad overview by Congress. So most of what we're going to talk about is going to be a criticism is really, sorry, SBA, it's directed at you, and that comes as a place from love. I love the SBA, I really do, and so it's constructive criticism for an agency I love and respect. But SBA has developed this scorecard at Congress's direction to measure essentially the government's success in providing opportunities to small businesses and those four subcategories of small businesses. And Congress has given SBA some very broad direction as to what that scorecard should look like, and then has left it to SBA to do the rest, to structure that scorecard in a way that hopefully will fulfill the congressional intent, and that will help hold agencies accountable, both for good outcomes, like agencies that do really well should be rewarded at least with press releases and things saying how well they're doing, and the ones who are doing maybe not as well have maybe not as good a score, and that encourages them to do better moving forward. So it's essentially meant to be that report card. How is the government as a whole doing when it comes to providing contracting opportunities to small businesses and those subcategories, and then at the agency level, the SBA measures 24 agencies. And how are those agencies doing? So the government gets a grade itself, overall grade, and each of those 24 agencies gets a grade as well. That's essentially the scorecard in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I know that there is some criticism, and there are some issues. There's a lot of people in GovCon, like Guy Timberlake and a few other, notables in our industry who kind of take issues with how they collect their information, how many times, certain agencies will count credits for, like for different things. But you're right. It is a really kind of a good way, at least, to kind of spark some conversations about maybe why we're falling short or maybe where you're having some challenges. And it does give kind of GovCon, contractors a way to say, oh, well, hey, agency, you could do a little bit better, with your score, and here's how you could do that. So I think it's a good way to open up the dialogue between both industry and the government on how both of us could probably do better, right? It's a partnership. It's not just incumbent upon one side to help fill those roles and goals.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I think the idea of the scorecard is a good one for the reasons you said. I mean, it gives it's supposed to give small businesses and the public at large, as well as policymakers like members of Congress themselves, a snapshot as to how the government's doing when it comes to serving the interests of small businesses and government contracting. And so, done well, I think it could be a really valuable tool. My concerns, and I think Guy Timberlake and others who've also expressed concerns, and we have some of the same concerns, as well as maybe some that are, I emphasize more, or Guy emphasizes more. But those in the field who've had concerns say, look, not that we think the scorecard is a bad idea. I haven't heard anyone say that, whose opinion that I respect anyway. But the way it's being implemented is not really meeting the needs of the small business community, and in fact, in some ways, as the headline of our talk is doing a disservice to the very small businesses that SBA is intended to serve. That's again my opinion.
Yeah. No, and we are here to get the unfiltered opinions of our guests. So this is great. You're in the right place, Steve.